Days passed, 1897. Lucy Herondale was 10 years old when she first met the boy in the forest. Growing up in London, Lucy had never imagined a place like Brosalind. The forest surrounded Herondale Manor on all sides, its trees bent together at the tops like cautious whisperers, dark green in the summer, burnished gold in the fall. The carpeting of moss underfoot was so green and soft that her father told her it was a pillow for fairies at night, and the white stars of the flowers that grew only in the hidden country of Idris made bracelets and rings for their delicate hands. James, of course, told her that fairies didn't have pillows. They slept underground, and they stole away naughty little girls in their sleep. Lucy stepped on his foot, which meant that Papa swept her up and carried her back to the house before a fight could erupt. James came from the ancient and noble line of Herondale, but that didn't mean he was above pulling his little sister's plaits, if the need arose. Late one night, the brightness of the moon woke Lucy. It was pouring into her room like milk, laying white bars of light over her bed and across the polished wood floor. She slipped out of bed and climbed through the window, dropping lightly to the flower bed underneath. It was a summer night, and she was warm in her nightdress. The edge of the forest, just past the stables where their horses were kept, seemed to glow. She flitted toward it like a small ghost. Her slippered feet barely disturbed the moss as she slid in between the trees. She amused herself at first by making chains of flowers and hanging them from branches. After that, she pretended she was Snow White fleeing from the huntsman. She would run through the tangled trees and then turn dramatically and gasp, putting the back of her hand to her forehead. "You will never slay me," she said, "for I am of royal blood and will one day be queen and twice as powerful as my stepmother, and I shall cut off her head." It was possible, she thought later, that she had not remembered the story of Snow White entirely correctly. Still, it was very enjoyable, and it was on her 4th or 5th sprint through the woods that she realized she was lost. She could no longer see the familiar shape of Herondale Manor through the trees. She spun around in a panic. The forest no longer seemed magical. Instead, the trees loomed above like threatening ghosts. She thought she could hear the chatter of unearthly voices through the rustle of leaves. The clouds had come out and covered the moon. She was alone in the dark. Lucy was brave, but she was only 10. She gave a little sob and began to run in what she thought was the right direction. But the forest only grew darker, the thorns more tangled. One caught at her nightdress and ripped a long tear in the fabric. She stumbled and fell. It felt like Alice's fall into Wonderland, though it was much shorter than that. She tumbled head over heels and hit a layer of hard, packed dirt. With a whimper, she sat up. She was lying at the bottom of a circular hole that had been dug into the earth. The sides were smooth and rose several feet above the reach of her arms. She tried digging her hands into the dirt that rose on every side of her and climbing up it the way she might shinny up a tree, but the earth was soft and crumbled away in her fingers. After the 5th time she tumbled from the side of the pit, she spied something white gleaming from the sheer side of the dirt wall. Hoping it was a root she could climb up, she bounded toward it and reached to grasp it. Soil fell away from it. It wasn't a root at all, but a white bone, and not an animal's. "Don't scream," said a voice above her. "It'll bring them." She threw her head back and stared. Leaning down over the side of the pit was a boy, older than her brother James, maybe even 16 years old. He had a lovely melancholy face and straight black hair without a hint of curl. The ends of his hair almost touched the collar of his shirt. "Bring who?" Lucy put her fists on her hips. "The fairies," he said. This is one of their pit traps. They usually use them to catch animals, but they'd be very pleased to find a little girl instead.